Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Backseat Drawing Workshops. I'm Eric.
And I'm Josh. And Eric, you're drawing this picture of these two beautiful little dragons, but I'm really curious how you're going to finish those scales off. I really don't know how to make a scale.
Like how to draw dragon scales?
Yeah, not like the balances, the.
Okay. So I'm going to talk specifically about how to draw the bigger scales. I don't like to draw every single scale on a dragon or a lizard or anything like that. Like in the same way that I wouldn't draw every single strand of hair on, a person's body. So what I'm talking about now are just the big scales. And I know that if you haven't seen the How to Train Your Dragon 3 trailer, this is featuring one of the teased dragons that might appear in the movie. But this dragon is very smooth, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to just go ahead and give her some scales, like how you'd expect Toothless to have scales all over his body. So I'm talking about like the big scales on the arm here, the big scales in the ear flaps. So I'm going to just pretend like she also has scales on her head. So
Right.
what I'm
So
going to do...
this limited scaling is more of a stylistic choice, right?
Yeah, and even within the models, they have big scales that show up just because you don't want to have too many repetitive pattern things, especially on something that's going to move around really fast, or you don't want to draw your focus away or you get too many details lost when you put too much scales on there. So I'm going to just put a few on the head and show you how I do it. So this right here is kind of a light color. So what I really want to do is go not too dark, but somewhere right in between and get like a light color like this.
So you're doing that with the eyedropper?
Yeah, just with the eyedropper. Yeah. And then with a light touch, I'm just kind of putting in some shapes, polygons, trapezoids, rhombuses.
What brush is that?
It's actually the first brush in my set. It's what I use for line art too.
It's a very basic, what you call that, a scratch brush? No.
No, it's the Smooth Inker. So yeah, if you don't have a brush similar to this, you can actually download this brush in the comments below this video. But it's just
hard
a smooth
edges.
Yeah, it's kind of hardish, soft. It feels a lot like an ink pen. Right. So just put in a few scattered shapes, and I'll just go ahead and zoom in so you can see that I've not really been focusing too hard on making these like really neat or accurate. They're kind of just blobs essentially with like some geometric shape. So now that I have them there, what I want to do is make them look like they have an elevation or some sort of topography to the scale. So what I'm going to do is consider the light source, which is coming from the top. So that means that the shadows are going to be around the edges. So I just want to go around the bottom edges, a little bit up the sides, and then just kind of outline them just slightly. And this will give the appearance that they have some sort of topography.
Wait, which brush is this now?
Same brush, just a little smaller.
Okay.
So now when I zoom out, you can see that now they look like they actually have a little bit of elevation to them, so they're casting their own shadow. And you can even go one more step. And I do this when I have something that is very, very high off the surface, and that is to actually add a highlight to the other side, the side the light would hit the edges of those. And this is going to make it look like the scales have a lot of depth.
Now, why did you use different colors for each of the scales?
I didn't. I just pressed harder and lighter, but I want to add that a level of variation because you don't want it to look too uniform. Then it's going to just look like a pattern that you just kind of dropped on top of there too uniformly. When you add a little bit of variation in the color, the size, the shape, the scatter, it's going to look more natural.
So is part of it partly you're matching the lighting on the object, but also you're actually trying to introduce variance to the coloration that you would see in neutral lighting?
Right, exactly. Okay. So now let's go ahead and do it for some of Toothless's scales. So I'll just go ahead and do the same thing. Big blocks. And what I like to do is kind of back them up as if there are, like if you push them together, they would fit together, but they're just separated, like continents, I guess, in Pangea.
It kind of looks like, I don't know, giraffe spots or leopard.
Yeah, kind of. A little less uniform, a little less patterned, just kind of scattered throughout. Now that I have them, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to add that darker edge just to the bottoms because that's where the shadow's being cast. And you can see here, I'm going pretty fast, but I'm also very zoomed in. Once I'm zoomed out, you can see that it adds relatively easy detail. I'll flip them on and off there so you can see that it just adds just a little bit more dimension to the drawing itself, and having that detail there is suggesting that they have more scales because the surface is rough.
Wow.
Yeah.
I bet that would work with other textures
It
apart
would.
from scales.
I use it for many things: rocks, trees, anything you can think of that has a little bit of topography off the surface it's sitting on. So scales is a really good example of that as well.
Well, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I hope this helped you, and we'll see you on the next episode of Backseat Drawing Workshops.
Smell you later.
It's like, it's good. Ah, krushita. Yeah. Wow. Oh my god.
You sound like an NPC. Like an RPG game.